I never thought the word thank you could feel like an insult, but that afternoon proved me wrong. We were sitting in my parents' living room, the same room where every major family decision had always been announced without debate. The curtains were half drawn, sunlight cutting across the coffee table, and my sister was in an unusually good mood. That alone should have warned me. She kept smiling at me, a slow, knowing smile, the kind people wear when they think they've already won. My parents noticed it too, but they mistook it for pride. My mother was relaxed, sipping tea. My father leaned back in his chair like a man satisfied with how things had turned out. No one noticed how quiet I was, how carefully I was watching every small movement. My sister cleared her throat dramatically and placed a thin folder on the table. She tapped it twice with her fingernail, drawing everyone's attention. I just wanted to say something, she said, glancing at me. Actually, thank you. My parents looked confused at first, then pleased. Gratitude was rare in our house, it was usually expected, not spoken. For what? My mother asked. My sister turned the folder toward them. For the college fund, she said casually. I found the papers. You've been saving all this time. That's actually sweet. She laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not an awkward one. A confident laugh, like she was already imagining how she'd explain this story to other people later. My father smiled immediately. See, he said, looking at me. Family looks out for family. My mother nodded, eyes shining. You should have told us earlier, she added, as if I'd simply forgotten to mention it. No one asked how my sister found the papers. No one asked why she thought they were hers to find. And no one asked me if that money was meant for her. That fund wasn't just savings. It wasn't spare cash tucked away for a rainy day. It was something I had built quietly over years, after learning early on that in this family, plans were safer when they were invisible. Every extra shift, every bonus, every sacrifice I never talked about had gone into it. It wasn't created for applause. It was created for protection. My sister leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. Honestly, she said, you weren't even using it properly. College is expensive. You should be happy it's finally doing something useful. My parents laughed lightly, agreeing with her without even realizing it. I felt my stomach tighten, but my face stayed calm. Years of practice had taught me how to disappear emotionally while staying physically present. I looked at my sister and nodded once. You're welcome, I said. That seemed to satisfy her even more. The conversation moved on. They talked about enrollment deadlines, living arrangements, how proud they were that everything was working out. I sat there, listening, feeling something inside me shift. Not anger. Not panic. Just clarity. When the conversation paused, I stood up and excused myself. No one stopped me. No one cared enough to ask why. I stepped into the hallway, closed the door softly behind me, and pulled out my phone. I didn't scroll. I didn't hesitate. I made one call. I spoke quietly, giving only the details that mattered. The person on the other end didn't sound surprised. If anything, they sounded prepared. When the call ended, my hands were steady. I walked back into the living room and sat down again. My sister was still smiling. None of them noticed the sound outside at first. The sharp knock at the door cut through the room, loud and unmistakable. Everyone froze. My sister looked at me, confused. Were you expecting someone? Before I could answer, the knock came again, firmer this time. And that was when everything they thought they understood began to fall apart. The second knock was harder, more impatient. My father frowned and stood up, irritation flashing across his face as if someone had interrupted something important. Who could that be? He muttered, already annoyed. My sister glanced at me again, suspicion finally creeping into her smile, but she still looked confident. She had no reason not to be. In her mind, everything was already settled. My father opened the door. Two men stood outside. One in a dark uniform, the other in a neat suit holding a clipboard. They didn't look angry. They didn't look confused. They looked official. Calm. Focused. The kind of people who don't knock unless they're sure they belong there. "Good afternoon," the man in the suit said. "We're here regarding a financial protection order and an unauthorized access report." The room went completely silent. My mother stepped forward, her voice trembling slightly. "There must be some mistake," she said. "This is a family matter." The man glanced at his clipboard. It became a legal matter the moment protected documents were accessed and removed without consent. My sister's face drained of color. "What documents?" she asked too quickly. The uniformed officer finally looked at her. "The financial records and fund documentation connected to an account registered under another party's name." All eyes turned to me. My sister laughed nervously. "This is ridiculous," she said. "I didn't steal anything. I just found some papers in the house." The man in the suit nodded slowly. "We're aware. That's why we're here. Finding is still considered unauthorized possession when the account holder hasn't granted access." My father looked at me now, truly looked at me, for the first time that day. "What is this?" he demanded. "What did you do?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't stand up. I simply answered. "I protected what was mine." The officer asked for the folder. My sister hesitated, clutching it to her chest like a shield. My mother whispered her name, telling her to give it back. Reluctantly, she handed it over. The man flipped through the pages, checking signatures, dates, account numbers. Everything matched. "These funds are not communal," he said plainly. "They're legally restricted. Any attempt to use them without authorization would result in immediate action." My sister's confidence cracked. But it was for college," she stammered. "Their family." I thought. "That assumption," the man interrupted gently, "is exactly why we're here." My father ran a hand through his hair, pacing now. "Why didn't you tell us any of this?" he asked me. His tone wasn't angry anymore. It was unsettled. "I tried," I said quietly. "Years ago. You told me to stop worrying and let you handle things. So I handled mine." The officer explained the next steps calmly. The papers would be returned. A formal notice would be issued. No charges, as long as there was no further attempt to access or move the funds. It was all very procedural. Very controlled. Nothing like the dramatic confrontation my sister had expected to dominate. When the door finally closed behind them, the house felt smaller. Heavier. My sister turned on me, her voice sharp. "You embarrassed me," she snapped. "You could have just talked to me." I met her eyes. "You didn't talk to me when you took it." My mother sat down slowly, covering her mouth. My father sank back into his chair, staring at the floor. The roles had shifted, and everyone could feel it. My sister tried one last time. "So what now?" she asked bitterly. "You just let it sit there while I struggle?" I stood up then. Calm. Steady. "Now," I said, "you learn the difference between help and entitlement." I picked up my coat. As I walked toward the door, my father called my name. I stopped but didn't turn around. "You've changed," he said. "No," I replied. "I just stopped explaining myself." And I walked out. What none of them knew yet was that this was only the beginning. The call I made earlier hadn't been the last one. It had been the first move in a process they couldn't undo. I didn't go far after leaving the house. I sat in my car for a long time, hands resting on the steering wheel, letting everything settle. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't angry. I felt something I hadn't felt in years: control. Not over them, but over myself. That mattered more. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. No calls from my sister. No messages pretending nothing had happened. My parents didn't reach out either. Silence, it turned out, was harder for them than it was for me. They had always relied on noise, opinions, decisions, assumptions to keep things moving their way. A week later, my mother called. Her voice was careful, softer than I remembered. She didn't accuse me. She didn't apologize either. She just asked how I was. I told her the truth. I was fine. Better than fine. There was a pause, the kind where someone wants to say more but doesn't know how. Then she asked about the money. I explained it simply. I told her it wasn't about punishment or revenge. It was about boundaries. That fund had never been created to rescue anyone else from choices they made without planning. It was created because I learned early that in our family, the person who prepared quietly survived best. She didn't argue. That surprised me more than anything. My sister, on the other hand, didn't take it well. She sent messages at first, short, sharp ones accusing me of being selfish, of caring more about numbers than family. I didn't respond. Then the tone changed. She asked if we could talk like adults. I still didn't respond. Finally, the messages stopped. That was when the real shift happened. Without the money she assumed would appear, plans collapsed. Deadlines were missed. Applications were withdrawn. Excuses ran out. My parents had to confront something they'd avoided for years. Helping one child by sacrificing another wasn't help at all. It was damage, just delayed. Months passed. Life moved forward. The fund stayed exactly where it was, untouched, protected, doing what it was always meant to do, exist quietly without explanation. I moved on too. I focused on my work, my future, my peace. No one questioned my decisions anymore. They didn't have the confidence to. At the next family gathering, everything felt different. Conversations were polite. Careful. My sister barely looked at me. My parents asked before assuming. No one joked about my plans. No one touched my things. The unspoken rule had finally changed. Later that night, as I was leaving, my father stopped me at the door. He didn't lecture. He didn't demand anything. He just said, "I didn't realize how much you'd thought ahead." I nodded. I had to. He didn't argue. Driving home, I realized something important. The moment that changed everything wasn't the knock on the door. It wasn't the officers or the papers or the confrontation. It was the moment I stopped trying to be understood by people who benefited from misunderstanding me. I didn't win by taking something back. I won by protecting what was always mine. And from that day on, no one in my family ever mistook my silence for weakness again.